Hey, I'm Robert Pearson, and this is Follow the Leader, where I sit down on my lunch break and we talk Bible stuff and being a man and how that all fits together. Going through the man cards one at a time in kind of a random order. We're on Genesis chapter 3, verses 22 and 23. It's only two verses, but there's some pivotal stuff in here, so let's jump into it. Genesis chapter 3, verses 22 to 23. Then the Lord God said, Behold, the man has become like one of us, knowing good and evil, and now he might stretch out his hand, and take also from the tree of life, and eat, and live forever. Therefore the Lord God sent him out from the Garden of Eden to cultivate the ground from which he was taken. Alright, this is after God's cursed everybody and kicked them all out of the garden. So, where does your mind go when you read this? It's interesting that being made in the image of God initially didn't include knowing the difference between good and evil. But somehow he was expected to obey and held accountable for his actions. And that's kind of an interesting conundrum. And at that juncture, God didn't want us to live forever, so he kicked us out of the garden. And we have another injunction to work. But now it's after the curse, now it's going to stink. Pardon me. And there's that recurring reminder, of course, that men are taken from the ground. Humans are made out of dirt. We're a bunch of dirt people walking around. That's interesting. So, I've always taken this to be taking something out of turn. If God didn't want people to have the knowledge of good and evil, why would he have put the tree in the garden? It doesn't make sense unless it wasn't a never, but a not yet. If he wanted mankind as a species to mature a little bit before gaining that knowledge, before having a full understanding. Obviously, he holds Adam responsible. I just had a verse in Proverbs that said, does not, when you say, I did not know, does the Lord not know this and take it into account? Obviously, God's not going to hold you accountable for something that you don't know. So clearly, the knowledge of good and evil isn't exactly the same as knowing to do what you're told. And it's always seemed to, the way I've always made sense of it is there are certain things in the world that your kid shouldn't know until he's old enough to know. Certain things about the way the world works, that even though it's a part of his nature, it's a part of who he is, it's not a part of who he is yet. They're not old enough or mature enough to understand sexual relationships in a proper context. They're not old enough or mature enough to, at certain ages, not know when to use cuss words. They're just going to use them all the time until they get mature enough. Now, here are these words. You're not allowed to use them most of the time. Here are the times and places it's okay. And so, it's always made sense to me that the tree of knowledge of good and evil wasn't a never ever at all, but rather a not yet, and it just wasn't relevant at that time. God puts it there and says, no, don't eat this or you'll die. Think about it. If your 3-year-old gets a hold of some Jack Daniels, they're going to the hospital pretty fast. However, at 30, it's not that big a deal. It's the same thing. You tell your 3-year-old, don't touch this, it could kill you. For aspirin or alcohol or certain things, it could kill a small child, but when you get stronger, when you're bigger, when you're more mature, those things aren't harmful, but rather enrich your understanding and experience of life, or make your life better in the case of medicines and stuff. So that always made sense to me, because why wouldn't Adam just cut it down and burn it? don't eat this or you'll die. Got it. Just torch it. Done. Never eat it at all. Like, why would God have put it there unless it was had some purpose other than just being tempting? Ooh. Why would you put a live electrical outlet in your kid's crib? That doesn't make any sense. So, anyway, that's the way I've always made sense of that whole interaction. But knowing good and evil is clearly a part of the older man has become like one of us. Knowing good and evil. And, however you reckon, obviously God is one. There's only one God. So us, the ways people explain that away are either he's using us, in a royal plural sense. There's a sense of the royal we that goes back. Whereas a monarch, you say we because you're a representative of an entire country of people. And you adopt that into your speech by using kind of a royal plurality in your pronouns and stuff. The other way is he's just talking about, himself and the angels. God and, the angels clearly know a difference between right and wrong, and, Satan and the other types are on the other end of that, so just an easier way to read it instead of having to go do backflips. Like, well, God's just talking about himself and the angels. He's got a crew of angels around him most all the time. You see in Samuel and in one of the Psalms and stuff, he's hanging out surrounded by angelic beings in Ezekiel and all over Revelation. He's never alone just sitting on his throne by himself. There's always angels around and stuff happening. So, lost my place here. There we go. No, it's straight to the scene. Yep. So, therefore the Lord sent him out from the Garden of Eden to cultivate the ground from which he was taken. So once again, that idea returns from earth you came, and to earth you shall return. That line we get in classic funerals: ashes to ashes and dust to dust. One day you're going to be worm food. This is life. But until then, we're sent into the world once again to work. A restating of that mission statement. There's the whole reason we were made to begin with, is he puts man in the garden to work. And then immediately he's putting Adam to work naming animals. And then just because we mess up, we get thrown out of the garden, and then, well, you're still going to work, pal. That's why you're here. That's your job. So, what can we learn about ourselves from this? Means you come into the world knowing good and evil. All of mankind is kind of burdened with the weight of knowing what's right and knowing what's wrong. And you're also burdened with, you're going to die one day. And let's just need to accept that. And it's important to be aware of that. And also, it's your job to work until you die. While you're here, knowing good and evil, to work. And that's, I don't know, you kind of see that in the way with people who retire and do nothing and just sit on the couch all day long. It don't last very long. If your goal in life is to do nothing, your life's going to get a lot shorter as soon as you start doing nothing. But if you see sort of the health and longevity of people who are just working their whole lives and every day get up with a purpose to go do something, they live some long, full lives, no matter how much they smoke sometimes. So it's interesting. So I don't know, what's the most important takeaway here? I keep coming back to the idea of work. Obviously, you're going to die. That's not really new information. But you know good and evil. You know what's right and what's wrong. And that's part of being human. And there are a lot of folks that say, oh, well, since man sinned, you can't do anything right now, and you're completely depraved. And that's not really the case. That's not the picture the Bible paints. And that was certainly never in any ancient Jewish writings. And they're the people that cooperated with God to write the Old Testament. and spent years and years analyzing the Old Testament, they read the original Hebrew language, they never got an idea that they were just eternally, permanently sinful from birth from any of the Old Testament. Don't get me wrong, ancient Jewish wisdom wasn't right on every point also, because otherwise they would all be Christians now. They wouldn't have missed Jesus. But just some of the fundamental tenets that, while yes, we all mess up, yes, we all sin, we also all know better. And we know what's right and what we should do, and what doing good looks like. And I don't know, I keep coming back to work. The most important takeaway is you're gonna work. Don't look for the easy way out. Don't look for the fast track. Don't look for something that lets you sit around and eat out all day and waste your life. But know you're gonna work. So find something you want to do. And if you do retire, find something now to do, to work for charity organizations or just be a handyman for your family, fixing sinks and stuff for your kids. Or but get up, get out of the house, go places, do something, and keep working. What does this change for us? Knowing this doesn't change a whole lot, except give you a little more weight and appreciation, right? That, yeah, you gotta work. You know what's right and you know what's wrong, and you're gonna die. That's just the way of things. So glad to deliver some cheery stuff today, but can't all be cake. Gotta have some meat sometimes too. All right. Give me your answer to these questions down below. Come track me down and say hi on Facebook if you aren't here already. It's facebook.com/follow to lead. Follow the number 2 lead. Follow to lead at follow to lead on Facebook. And yep, that's it. I'll see you next time. Godspeed.